Okay, in this video, I'm going to give you steps to get to your first paid admin job with no admin experience. Let's get straight into it. Before I give you the steps, I just wanted to say I thought I would be a good person to talk about this because I've been working in administrative roles for more than 4 years now, and I think it's a really amazing industry to get into if you want to pivot into something else, if you're not sure what you want to do, or if you just really want to move up in administration. I have been working in roles that have required lots of finance and project management skills, as well as general business administration. So let's jump straight into it. 5 amazing tips to get you that job that you want. Let's start off with a quick statistic from the ONS. Apparently, in 2023, ONS said that the UK average salary was just under £35,000. This is, I would say, the average type of salary that you can get in the UK for an administrative role. But my last 2 roles that I've had have had salaries that were higher than this. So this is why I think I am a good person to talk about this. An admin job probably won't make you a millionaire, but it can get you into a specific industry that you want to get into, for example. So let's start off with step 0 before I get into step 1. Step 0 is, if you are eligible, think about going for a business administration apprenticeship. Now, this was my first way of getting into administration, and I think apprenticeships are an amazing experience for people because you are learning on the job and getting paid on the job without the pressure of having to pay back something afterwards, which is what you do when you are getting a degree. The amazing thing about apprenticeships is that employers know that you are literally learning, so the pressure that you have to complete certain tasks isn't the same as someone who is a full-time employee, for example, of that same company. I did my particular apprenticeship at Multiverse, which was formerly called White Hat, and I did a level 3 business administration apprenticeship. And this gave me a lot of useful skills, which I then used to get the other types of admin jobs that I was looking for. One thing that I would note is to check the terms and conditions, because all types of apprenticeships have different types of conditions that come with it. And I'm talking right now about apprenticeships that are in the UK, but this will probably apply for overseas apprenticeships as well. The reason why this is step 0 is because most people watching this video will probably not be eligible for an apprenticeship. In the UK anyways, many apprenticeships require people to have not been to university, so to have not had a degree, and sometimes they also require you to be under a certain age. So for example, I've seen some apprenticeships that require people to be under the age of 25 or 30. There are also some other apprenticeships, such as many degree apprenticeships, where you are required to work for the employer for a number of years after completing the apprenticeship. So it's not necessarily the fact that you will just get to do this apprenticeship and then leave. There are some roles that require you to stay. So it's important for you to read the terms and conditions to see what applies to you. But I guess this is why this is step 0, because technically this isn't an admin job, but if you have the opportunity to, I would definitely recommend getting some sort of administrative apprenticeship qualification, a good experience to get your foot into the door, and just basically get paid to learn, which is amazing. So action for people who may be eligible, and if you're in the UK, check on the gov.uk website, check Multiverse's website. They are an amazing apprenticeship provider. I mean, they definitely were when I did it, and I think they still are now. Basically check to see if you're eligible for an apprenticeship. If you are, I would highly suggest doing it. Let's now get on to step 1 for getting that administrative job that you want with no prior experience. Step 1 is assess the admin responsibilities within your current role. Okay, so back to our good old friend, the ONS, and I'm looking at my notes over here on my laptop. But the ONS said in 2023, 75% of the UK, roughly 75% of the UK were employed. So even though people watching this video will hopefully be from around the world, let's assume that 3/4 of the people watching this video are employed. So I'm first going to be talking to the people who are employed. It's really important to assess the admin responsibilities within your current role to see what types of things you could potentially do or what types of things you are already doing that are actually more admin related than you think. I can't think of a single job where there isn't an administrative aspect within that role or within that environment. And your task is to sit down and first think about the tasks that you do every day. Is there anything that could be linked to admin? And if not, look around you, look around your environment and think about the people that you work with. Is anyone around you doing something administrative that you could potentially take on to do? If you find colleagues who are doing administrative things, you need to reach out to them and ask to help out, because this is going to be your way to gain that experience and to put it on your CV. So for example, let's say you are a waitress or maybe a bartender at a restaurant or a bar. There is most likely someone or a group of people who have to order the food or the drinks or the things that you are serving in this bar or this restaurant. If this is your job, this is an administrative task that you are doing, because many admin roles require these administrators to order things, resources for a particular working environment. So for example, if someone is an office administrator within a specific office, they would usually be responsible for ordering stationery, maybe milk, drinks for events, different things like this. So this is a good type of skill that you can put on your CV and say that you do. That is administrative. So that was one example. The important thing is to think about how you word these things. So you wouldn't just say on your CV, I've ordered food for the restaurant. No, instead, the administrative task that you're doing is ordering business supplies or managing expenditure, budget tracking. Let's say your manager gives you a budget of £500 every week to order for the restaurant. You are tracking the budget by seeing how much you're ordering, how much is needed, maybe estimating how many customers you're going to have. This is something that many administrators need to do. So it's just about how you word it to put on your CV. Let's give another example. Let's say you are a cleaner or someone who helps to organize or tidy a specific working environment. Let's say it's a big fancy office, and part of this cleaning role, part of these responsibilities require you to speak to maybe a very senior manager in this working environment, and maybe you have to clean the room in a certain way before a particular day. Let's say once a week they do this very big meeting, and every single Monday they want you to organize this room in a certain way. You might think this is just speaking to a big senior person, asking them to tidy the room, but you are actually liaising with stakeholders to organize a particular venue. You might be in charge of tidying a room or organizing a room. That's a very good word to use, organizing, to prepare for specific meetings. So that is actually meeting organization and meeting preparation. You might be supporting external people with room bookings. Let's say there are different clients that come into the room to use this particular space. That is supporting people with the bookings of rooms, because you might have to tidy it up. You might have to be the one who organizes it. Basically, I can't tell you what you do in your job, but you really need to sit down and think about what you do and think about the administrative things that other people do and think about how you can bring those two things together. Let's give another example. Let's say you work as an early years practitioner in a nursery, and part of this role requires you to maybe walk around with new parents to show them around, to see the type of environment that children will be staying in. So you might think this is just walking around with parents or giving parents a tour of the nursery, but you are actually welcoming visitors and external stakeholders, or you could just say welcoming visitors and stakeholders. If you are with a parent of a child in the nursery, that parent is a stakeholder of the nursery. A stakeholder is a word that will be used quite a lot in administrations. If you don't know what it is, do a Google search and find out. But you're also welcoming visitors. You're also providing information to potential customers. If they are, for example, new parents coming into the nursery and asking about maybe the cost of the fees, or maybe what type of food their children would eat, this is you providing information to customers. So the more you think about what you do, the more you realize that you are doing administrative tasks, because admin is everywhere, and you just have to think about how you word it and tailor it to that specific role that you are applying for. So for the people who don't work, I'm sorry to say, but you're probably going to have to get a job, because the purpose of this video is to help you get an administrative role. And a lot of these roles require you to fulfill a lot of tasks. There are a lot of responsibilities. So if you are not working at all, it might be quite hard for you to start working straight away in a very intensive administrative role. But in terms of the experience, even if you don't have a paid job, technically, I would classify an unpaid job as a job as well. And there are many different things that you could be doing if you are, for example, volunteering, that would be administrative. And the examples that I've just given, they could also apply to specific unpaid roles that you are doing as well. So the action relating to this step is to think about the role that you currently do and write down all the responsibilities that you can think of in that role. Don't think about admin, just write down those responsibilities, and then afterwards look at those responsibilities and tailor them to specific administrative responsibilities. So you would see these administrative responsibilities on the job description, for example, of the job that you're applying for, or you could easily search for general administrative roles. But please remember that there are different types of roles, different types of administrative roles that will have different types of responsibilities. So you need to know what you are applying for. But basically think about what you do or what people around you do, and think about how you can either try and do those things, or how you are already doing those things and how you can write that on your CV and in your applications. So step 2 is for you to amend your CV to reflect the admin experience from your current job and work experience, for example, from other things that you have done. So we're going to have a quick look at CVs. Now, even though this isn't a CV building exercise, I thought it would just be useful to quickly go through a template of a CV that I have, and I will leave this free of charge, of course, in the description, so you can use it if you need to. But let's just quickly go through this. I think this is a good idea to have your full name and the city and the country that you are in. I've seen on some CVs, because I have been on interview panels before, I've seen some people put their full address on CVs. I don't think that's a very good idea, because you don't know who's on the interview panel. You don't know who has some sort of bias towards the area that you live in. I think you should try and avoid that if possible. But the city and the country is fine. I think at the beginning, it's always useful to basically just have a quick summary of who you are and what you do, but nothing needs to be very detailed. One thing that I would say, I am not a HR expert, but I have talked to many HR and recruiting managers before, and I have been told that many recruiters do prefer shorter CVs. So I would suggest trying to keep your CV, especially for an administrative role, to 2 pages. Obviously, this would differ for different types of jobs that you're applying for. I'm sure if you're applying for an academic position as a lecturer in a very research intensive university, a CV of more than 2 pages would probably be the standard. But remember, this is an entry level administrative role that you're applying for. There will be many people applying for this type of role. I have been in interview panels where it's really hard to go through so many different applications. So you need to make sure yours is the one that stands out and people want to read it. So I would highly suggest, for the type of role that you are applying for now, stick to 2 pages. Core skills here, I've mentioned time management, which is very crucial, but you can definitely change these. This is just a common one that I see on a lot of CVs. Knowledge of these specific packages, we'll talk about this in a future step. Confidence in taking minutes. Minute taking, I mean, I don't know about other countries, but in the UK, a lot of administrative roles require minute taking. So if you don't know how to take minutes, if you've never taken minutes before, find a way to learn how to do this. It's basically just transcribing what has been said in a meeting, but not doing it word for word, basically summarizing what has been said, the key points of a meeting. So if you work in a setting right now that has some sort of meeting, let's say you volunteer at your child's local football club, and once a month they have some sort of AGM. Maybe no one takes minutes for this, just ask to take the minutes. I mean, it's actually better if you are taking minutes for a meeting where nobody reads the minutes, because it means that there isn't pressure for you to write them in a particular way, and you can just slowly learn how to do them in your own time. But I think if you don't know how to take minutes, if you've never done them before, just practice doing it and put it on your CV. It will definitely stand out. So here you can put your professional expertise, where you've worked, the starts and end dates, and there's also a bit of volunteering as well. Obviously, if you have only volunteered, then just amend the titles and fit them to how you please, and then have a small section for your education. Obviously, it's good if you have a degree. That's a great thing to have. Before administrative roles is not necessarily that you will be employed just because you have a degree. Experience is very important, which is why it needs to be at the beginning, at the front page. But you can still mention what types of qualifications you have. That is basically the rundown of the CV. Having a CV is extremely important. Out of the hundreds of jobs I've probably applied for, there's only been one that I can remember that didn't require me to upload a CV. And even then, I still had to write down the list of responsibilities that I had in the role, which means that that's something you can just copy from CV anyways. So it's very important for you to have a CV when applying for these types of jobs. Another important thing for me to say is that once you've created your CV, don't just send it to 30 or 40 different jobs. Send it to a few, see what the reaction is, and amend as necessary. I would also say that your CV should be amended depending on the type of job that you apply for. Just because you are applying for a receptionist job in a production company, for example, it doesn't mean it's going to be the same as a receptionist role in an accountancy firm. And I'm saying this because I've applied for both types of roles. They will have very different types of responsibilities, even if they have the same job title. So make sure you're actually reading the job description of what you're applying for to see if your CV is suitable or if you need to amend a few responsibilities. And that could even just be moving some of the responsibilities up and down the list to show what is the most important. But the key thing is to make sure that your CV looks like the job that you are applying for, because recruiters can tell if someone has just sent out their CV or application to millions of jobs. Another thing that I will say is that even though websites like Total Jobs, Indeed and LinkedIn are useful when applying for jobs. They are very oversaturated, and there are other websites that you can also use to look for specific types of roles. So other websites could include Startup Jobs, Jobs.ac, Guardian Jobs, and Third Sector. So these are examples of websites that might focus on specific types of areas. So for example, Third Sector focuses on charity-related jobs, but make sure to have a look at different types of recruitment websites and don't just apply using the very big mass-marketed websites like Indeed. Even though they are also great, there are other places where you can apply for jobs. So step 3 is, aside from popular job recruiters and job advertisers, look for entry-level jobs in local offices. So this might not be a very popular step, but it is crucial if you actually want to get your first job. And when I say local offices, I mean places like local schools, estate agents, accountancy offices, nurseries. These are places that always need administrative roles, but they might not get as many people applying as the really big and fancy corporations and companies. So even though it's important for you to aim high and to want to work in places like Barclays or Google and Meta, Goldman Sachs, we have to understand that you are trying to get your first administrative role. And the more popular a company is, the more leverage they have on the types of people they want to employ. From memory, I think for a basic administrative role, Google, for example, needs 2 to 3 years of experience. So it's going to be very hard for you, if you don't have any experience at all, to get that type of job. So I'm not saying you shouldn't apply for these corporations at all, but definitely choose how you spend your time when it comes to applying for these different types of jobs. I would definitely say it's better to focus on the smaller scale companies and corporations and institutions. And then later on, when you want to move up or when you want to move on, you have more flexibility and experience to do that. And if you don't want to apply for extremely local places like schools or estate agents, that's understandable. I would then suggest applying for government-funded agencies and institutions like hospitals and universities and civil service jobs for people in the UK, because they have usually a lot of funding for a lot of different types of roles, and they are usually constantly recruiting as well. So for example, if you apply to a university in the UK, you definitely have a chance of getting a role if you apply for one of the entry-level positions, and then you can slowly move up as you are in the company. With those types of jobs, as I just said, apply for the lower bands. Some people make the mistake of applying for senior positions in these types of companies. If you are applying for a job in the civil service and you're applying for a managerial role and you've never had an administrative job before, it's very unlikely you're going to get an interview, because there are people in the institution who will be moving around, who will have more experience than you, more leverage. So as I said, this step is really just about thinking about how you utilize your time and making sure you're applying for the right types of roles, because it can be very tiresome applying for so many different positions. So time for step 4. For your CV and cover letter and the application, but also for the interview, identify the admin-related areas in your role and how they overlap with administrative jobs. So even though this sounds like step 1, in this step, we're thinking more about the general area, the general administrative environment, and how that applies to what you are applying for. So this might sound a bit confusing, but if we think about administrative areas, what does that mean? Well, I can give you a few examples. Health and safety, customer service, comms and marketing, invoicing. Those are the ones that I can think of off the top of my head. But basically, these are different areas that you might be working in within your current role, and they might be areas that will also come up in the administrative role that you want to apply for. And the reason why we need to do this is because we need to think about what your interview is going to look like and how to prepare different scenarios that you need to talk about during your interview, because you need to ensure recruiters and the people on the interview panel that you relate and that your current role relates to the type of job you are looking to go into. Okay, so let's think about the different areas. It's getting very dark here, by the way, but I really don't want to turn the light on. So let's think about the different areas. For example, if in your current role, let's go back to the waiter or the bartender, maybe part of your role requires you to be a first aider, or to maybe be a fire marshal, or to do fire walks, to do safety walks maybe. This health and safety is an area in your current role that also links to administration, because many administrators have to do health and safety related tasks. So think about a scenario in your current role that relates to health and safety. So if the interview panelists ask you about health and safety, you have something to talk about. Another example could be that in your current role, maybe you work in a place where you have to pick up the phone quite often. Using the phone is a very common type of responsibility that many administrators will have, especially if you are a receptionist or front of house. So this is customer service, and you can have a customer service related scenario ready. So when it's time to speak about that in the interview, you can link what you currently do in customer service to what they will require you to do in this new administrative role. Another example could be, let's say you update a social media page for, let's say you're working in your child's football team again, the social media page that you have to update. This is part of communications and marketing, and many administrators will have specific responsibilities that would link to comms and marketing. So you can have this sort of scenario ready as well. So the purpose of this step is to basically think about the wider types of administrative areas and think of scenarios in your current job, think about scenarios in the new job, and have them ready for the interview. Aside from the areas that I said earlier, I also have a note of a few others, like IT. That's another big type of area that you might be related to in your current role that will definitely link to administration. Another type of area is marketing as well, which I have mentioned. Site management is also another important one. Administrators might be required to maintain a particular area, and that might be something that you are doing in your current role. So basically, think about admin related areas and how they overlap with the job that you are applying for. Let's talk about step 5. So step 5, which I think is very important, but all of these tips are very important, is that for interviews, make sure to familiarize yourself with the universal administrative systems. Now, most people spend so long preparing for the questions that will come up in the interview that they forget that there may be potentially a test that they have to do, or there may be certain systems that they have to use to even access the interview itself. So for example, Teams, Outlook, Zoom, Microsoft Excel, Microsoft Word are all types of software that are commonly used in administrative roles. Make sure you know how to use these systems, even if you haven't used it for a long amount of time in your current position. For example, Outlook is an email system that many organizations use within the UK. This will be something that recruiters will just assume you know how to use. So if there's a situation where they find out you don't know how to use this type of system, or you don't know how to use Excel, then it probably won't favor you during the interview process, because it could just be a red flag to them. Teams is another one that is commonly used. And if you have an online interview, there's a chance that your interview will be on Teams or on Zoom. So it's important for you to know how to log onto these systems and how to actually access the meetings, how to click the links, how to change your name. Because if not, if the recruiters realize, wow, this person doesn't know how to use Teams, then it could instantly bring you to the bottom of the pile, because it's just a requirement of what they expect people to know how to use. These systems will be the bread and the butter of your job, so make sure you know how to use them in advance. The thing about the test as well, sometimes with administrative roles, there'll be a test that you have to do. So a nice little tip to give is that sometimes, I mean, you could be applying for any type of job, so take this with a pinch of salt, but there is commonly a task related to time management, and there might be a task where you have to, for example, organize different tasks that you've been given to do based on the level of urgency and importance, for example. So if you are giving this task to do on Word, but you don't know how to, for example, save a file or copy and paste, these might sound basic, but if you've never used these types of systems before, it's understandable that you might not know how to use these. So if you're watching this video, it means you probably have access to the internet. There are so many tutorials on YouTube. Even if you don't have access to Microsoft or the Microsoft packages, you can use Google packages as well. Most of them are free and they have very similar properties. But what I'm trying to say is that just make sure to familiarize yourself with these systems before the interview, because anything could come up. And then once you get the job, you can also practice before you start as well. But I mean, having the job is different to going to the interview. So make sure you prepare and know how to use these systems. Another one that I put here that I think is super important, but I mean, I could just be biased, but if you have a virtual interview, so an online interview, please try and use a laptop or a computer for this interview. Please try not to have this interview using a phone or a tablet, because from the other side, it's very easy to see when someone is using a phone or a tablet. And it's understandable that some people might not have access to a laptop or computer, but try and borrow it from someone. In the UK, many council libraries have laptops that people can borrow. I would suggest having this because it makes you seem more professional. It means that the phone isn't dropping every 5 minutes. It means that you can put it on a flat surface and you can be prepared without having to worry about the volume. This is something that the times that I have seen people use a phone, it just doesn't look as presentable in my opinion. But as I said, there are always going to be different people on the interview panel, and you might have a panel where everyone doesn't have a problem with that, but then you might unfortunately be on a panel where someone has a very strong bias to people using phones or not looking presentable on the screen. And this is about you trying to get the job, so we have to make sure that you are as ready as possible for this. That's why this step is very important. You don't know what's going to come up in the interview, you don't know who's going to be on the panel, so just make sure you're ready and you know how to use the systems. But anyways, that is it for this video, guys. I hope you found it useful. It's gotten very dark all of a sudden, but I didn't want to turn the light on. But I mean, yeah, administrative roles have helped me quite a lot in my career so far. I've now realized I want to move on to something else, but if I hadn't have done these types of jobs, I wouldn't have known what was available. So you might be in the type of position where you feel like you want to work in admin, you want to work in an office, you don't want a job maybe that is very physically demanding. So this might be a very good path for you. As I said at the beginning of this video, it's not going to make you a millionaire, but it will probably put you down a path that is probably better than what you're on right now. So I hope this video was useful. Let me know what types of jobs you're applying for and what types of videos you want from me next. But I hope the job hunting goes well. Let me know what step was the most useful, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.